Twitter now has suspended another of President Trump's Twitter accounts, this time his campaign account @TeamTrump. This comes after Twitter shut down the president's personal account Friday following the president's comments on the violence at the U.S. Capitol. Twitter has been the president's primary method of communication during his administration. Twitter says the ban is to prevent, quote, further incitement of violence. While Senator Lindsey Graham has condemned Wednesday's violence, he called out the staff at Twitter for muzzling the president, tweeting, quote, Twitter may ban me for this, but I willingly accept that fate. Your decision to permanently ban President Trump is a serious mistake. The Ayatollah can tweet, but Trump can't. Says a lot about the people who run Twitter. Well, Twitter has banned President Trump from its social media platform permanently, saying, quote, after close review of recent tweets from the real Donald Trump account and the context around them, we have permanently suspended the account due to the risk of further incitement of violence. So tonight we are joined by Eric Goldman, a tech attorney and professor of law at Santa Clara University School of Law in Silicon Valley. Professor Goldman, first, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Well, first, can you tell me, what was your reaction to Twitter's decision to ban President Trump?
On the one hand, I think it was a long time coming. So I think for me and I think for many other people, we were pleased to see that Twitter had finally made that decision. But it was also a really powerful statement by Twitter that they were willing to take away the account of a sitting president. So I was both stunned by Twitter's willingness to do that, but also happy that they realized they had to.
Well, and Professor, you say it was a long time coming. I mean, I know that there were some people who had issue with some of the things he had tweeted in the past. Why do you think now? Why do you think it's happened now?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both the fact that President Trump is a lame duck president, so he is going to lose his power in a matter of a couple of weeks. So moving that forward isn't as big of a deal as when he was still in office and not subject to lame duck. I also think that the events of Wednesday really rattled our country and certainly rattled many internet services, and it made them question, what are we doing and do we need to do more?
Well, what do you think the impacts of Twitter's decision are on First Amendment rights and free speech?
Yeah, so I think that there's a lot of confusion about exactly what free speech means. Free speech is a right that's guaranteed in our Constitution with respect to government restrictions on our ability to speak. So if the government is taking away our power to talk, that's a violation of our constitutional rights. When a private entity decides not to publish content from third parties, what they're really saying is that didn't meet our editorial standards. It's not fit for our audience. And so in that sense, it's actually the freedom of the press to decide what they think is fit for their audience is another constitutionally protected right. So I think that what Twitter did was actually a personification or exemplification of free speech, even though some people feel like it wasn't.
Well, absolutely. And just to kind of expand upon that just a bit, it is obviously a private company, but I've seen some people saying, well, this has become a public forum for the president. What's your response to that?
Yeah, the public forum notion really is related very closely to the services that governments provide. Traditionally, public fora were things like sidewalks and parks and streets. These are things that the government owns, manages, and is responsible for. It doesn't really extend to any kind of online circumstance. Really, I think we should think about Twitter as being the equivalent of the newspaper that decides what stories it wants to print. Or, for that matter, a broadcaster like WGN deciding which stories it wants to publish.
All right, and Professor Goldman, we've seen the president bring many lawsuits challenging the election. Do you foresee a legal challenge by the president, by himself, or other interested parties to this action by Twitter?
It's certainly possible. We have seen dozens of lawsuits against Twitter and other social media companies for terminating or suspending accounts. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see more of those. Trump has talked a big game about bringing lawsuits, but he rarely actually does when it comes to speech matters. So it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't here, not because he's happy. We know he isn't, but just because he's not going to win. And I think he'll probably realize that when he looks at the legal analysis. I think he's going to say that's just a waste of his money.
And what do you think will happen moving forward as far as Twitter being a platform? We've already established it as a private company, but I know there's already been a movement of a number of people deciding to leave and just deactivate their accounts.
Yeah, it was a huge decision by Twitter because they knew that not only were they taking away their star attraction that was bringing people to Twitter's door, but that a lot of people were going to follow Trump out the door. And it kind of split Twitter's user base by a big chunk and has just moved it off of Twitter. What happens to Twitter after this? I don't know. But they were willing to foreclose all that activity and revenue because they realized that continuing to let that kind of activity take place was even more damaging to their business. So Twitter was in a tough spot. What happens to them? I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll have to see. And just speaking of people choosing to leave, we know that Parler, which is an app that has been preferred by many conservatives now, describes itself as a free speech alternative social media platform. But we know now that Google Play has banned the app. The Apple Store has sent a warning to its developers about potentially violent posts. So, Professor, what are your thoughts about that?
I think Parler's in a really tough spot as well. Parler has not been subject to the kind of lawsuits that the other social media enterprises have experienced. But Parler's going to have a reckoning of its own. Parler, taking a very hands-off approach to its content base, has created some really problematic content. And when the litigation starts, it's not clear to me how what Parler's endgame looks like.
I guess we'll have to wait and see. Professor Eric Goldman, tech attorney, professor of law at Santa Clara University School of Law. We thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Yeah, thank you.